reaching beyond the borders into the unknown. Welcome to Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma.
Reaching beyond the borders into the unknown. Hello everyone, and this is Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. And we are here live with Mr. Adam Stone. He is the podcast host of This Could Get Weird. How's it going, Adam?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
We had a very good weekend for paranormal investigations.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of teams were out. The supermoon was out again.
Yep.
I know a lot of teams have been reading online how they got some good evidence on the investigation part. Our investigation was pretty slow this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we got bupkis. Just to put it nicely, usually the location we go to, it's pretty hit or miss, and this was definitely a miss. But last time we were there, we got a hit. But this time, it was not a lot going on, though we did, got some good PR out of it.
While you're listening in, whatever we talk about, I want to make sure the audience knows, you need to be open-minded, because there's different theories and different ways of paranormal groups do things. There's spiritualist groups and there are scientific groups. We're going to be more on the scientific basis today.
Yeah.
One thing that we're going to be talking about is paranormal equipment and being on a budget. A lot of teams are starting off out there and they don't know where to go. I mean, they're always asking, how do I get started? A lot of you have already listened into episode 1 where I kind of dive into it, and we're going to get in more detail about it today. That's why Adam is here, and let's just kind of dive on into it, folks. I think a lot when it comes with ghost hunting for equipment, you need the basics.
Right.
I know people are thinking like, well, how do I get started? One thing I talk about people needing is pen and paper.
Yep.
Let's kind of dive into, okay, what do you use pen and paper for?
You got to mark down everything that happens. Got to make note of everything, every time, every little bit. So that way, if you say you have like just a recorder or a camcorder or anything going that's recording the environment in real time, you want to be able to, make note of that. So when you go back through it, you can, go back and maybe listen, see what's going on, and possibly try to debunk what happened. And that's also another reason why we mark that stuff down, so we can go back later and say, okay, why did this happen at X time? What was the temperature like? What was going on at that moment? So we can try to recreate that as best as possible.
And documentation is important. On our investigations, we have someone on the team. She keeps up all the notes.
Uh-huh.
So if there's any temperature changes or anything like that, everything is noted down.
Timestamped and everything.
We'll make a grid of the location. We'll make out a little map, a drawing of the building. That way we can note down hot spots, temperature changes, and different things like that.
Uh-huh.
Camera positions,
Yeah.
Where recorders are located at. And that stuff helps you out. For us, we deploy a lot of recorders.
Oh, yeah.
Before noting that stuff down, you forget where to leave that recorder.
Yeah.
And you have to start searching the building for your recorders.
Those things get expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always good to have that stuff documented. And that way, if you have to show a client, though, that, okay, we picked up an EVP out of room A, this is where the recorder was sitting.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's better to, fact check everything, being able to watch your step and everything.
Exactly.
You got to be able to, you hear, something on recorder A, well, that was next to recorder D. We got to listen back to that exact moment and see maybe a possibility of it caught that as well.
And it goes back to checks and balances.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know a lot of people, they think that when they get into the paranormal field, they watch all these TV shows and stuff, and they immediately think, I got to have all these expensive equipment.
I was one of them.
Oh, I was too. You're part of the group, like, how are we going to afford all this stuff?
Uh-huh.
But one thing I've learned, though, is that when you're into ghost hunting, you have 0 to none budget. Okay?
Oh, yeah. It's all out of pocket.
It's all out of pocket because I know there's some groups that think they want to charge to do their investigations. I think that's bull crap. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're charging somebody on something that can't be proven yet.
Exactly.
We can't prove ghosts exist. If it was a way of proving ghosts exist, we wouldn't be out investigating anymore because the puzzle's been solved.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to investigate. So while in this investigative stage, I can understand people feel like we got to get money rolling in, but that's why you have car washes, fundraisers, and stuff like that to get equipment.
Also, to keep in mind is when you're watching these TV shows, they're not doing that. They're not paying for all this out of pocket.
Oh no, it's from the network.
Yeah, they're backing them up, with this huge budget, because you watch something like, say, Ghost Adventures. All their cameras are essentially Sony's, and the particular model of Sony that they have, you're looking between $800 to $1,500 cameras, and they have them all over the place. They have like a huge assortment of them. That's a network buying that. That's not out of your pocket.
People are wondering, like, okay, what do we need to get to start off with? I watched some video.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen some of their videos.
Screen Freak.
Yeah, Screen Freak. He's on YouTube as well. But he's got several segments on. You can go to Walmart, Target.
That's where I got my first equipment.
Well, yeah, like I said, pen and paper. That's definitely a watch.
Watch. Always documenting time.
Everybody on your team should have a watch on. Got to document the time. Of course, when we do our recordings, we'd be asking questions. On occasion, we'll pop out it's 107, 115. And we do that at random. That way, when we go through the recorders, we can go back to the client and say, we got this disembodied voice at 1:05 in the morning. Also boils down to, for the basics, a digital recorder. Now, if you can find the old school tape recorders and tape, those are
gold.
Those are gold. They're kind of getting hard to find anymore.
Right. The little mini tapes you can get are the hardest thing to get.
I think you can still find the tape recorders like at Walmart and Target, but
I want to say I might have seen one at like Office Depot.
Yeah, Office Depot, but they're kind of phasing out.
Yeah, really quickly too, because everything's gone digital, and but even those are getting pretty reasonably priced, because cheapest one I saw, like $30.
When it comes down with the tape recorders, the tapes are magnetic, so you can't manipulate whatever's on that tape. If you get an EVP, it's gonna be hard to fake that, or I'm sure somebody could probably be whispering in the background. It's pretty concrete. You really can't.
Well, when the concept of EVP first came about, it was all back to the whole reel-to-reel.
Reel-to-reel, yeah.
And that's how they were, cappturing this evidence, because that was just what they had at the time. Now, we're more at an advanced age where, you might not even need a tape recorder. A cell phone can record just as well. Right then and there, you have a recorder just to start out with. And a lot of people, who can't afford those things, they use their cell phones. Yeah,
and if your cell phone doesn't have that on there, there's my cell phone, it's an Android, and I was able to download a app offline for a voice recorder, and it works out great.
Yeah,
I picked off EVPs like that before.
Yeah, and photography, again, go to your cell phone. I mean, you could go out and spend money, on like a, they've got relatively like cheap digital cameras out there, but everyone wants the best. They want the top of the line, and what's that going to prove? Honestly, the theory is, the lower the quality, the better you might get some evidence. Because back to EVP. A lot of people think that the more static and hiss and background noise you have, the better chances you are capturing the EVP. Now, if you have a super top-of-the-line recorder that cuts out all that background noise and hiss, well, you're eliminating your chances of an EVP. Yeah,
because they need to use that white noise to carry over their conversation.
Right, because, the theory, also explains that, that spirits are on a different frequency, and the recorder might be able to hit that right frequency, that right note. Might be able to hear that. And so that's what that level they're speaking on. There's all types of ITC or instrumental transcommunication, and it's just another form of it. It's basically the earliest form of ITC is EVP. That's the basis right there. And then you got your spirit boxes, your ovuluses, pointing a camcorder to a TV that's on static. That's another form. Water ITC, things like that. It just goes on and on and on to the point that it's all just part of one big lump sum group, and it's all leaning towards the same thing.
And one thing I learned with using your cell phone to take pictures is that you really have to debunk a lot, because one
Yeah.
thing to remember when it comes with cell phones is the shutter speed.
You can't control that on a cell phone.
Yeah,
really.
you can't control it. With cell phones, they get oily from putting it to your face, on your hand, so you have to make sure that the lenses are clean on it. Any photographs you get with like a cell phone, or even just a basic camera, I use a basic digital camera I bought from Walmart. It wasn't that expensive, but you get lens flare. It does pick up dust particles, the old orb thing, does pick up that up a lot. So just keep that in mind. Though we had a situation at the old farmhouse, which is our team's paranormal research spot. We thought we had shadow movement, and we were able to debunk it was with big hands on a small camera. So the person taking the photograph with that camera, their finger just slightly went over that flash.
Yeah, right about
or over the lens part. That made it look like it was a shadow on the wall or something moving across. So that's stuff to keep in mind. Of course, with that smaller camera, you can't control the shutter speed. Lens flare is really bad when it comes with the basic digital cameras. But you still may get something.
Yeah, there's always that possibility. If you know what you're doing, keeping it as steady as possible, not pointing it at any reflective surfaces or anything, good chance, you'll take a good picture with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of people here are thinking too of, well, I want to get a K2 meter, I want to get a EMF meter. A lot of that stuff you can order online, ghoststop.com, Ghost Augustine.
Yep.
There's several different places where you can.
Ghost Hunter store based out of the East Coast.
I've seen it online where you can use a compass.
A compass, yeah.
Just a standard compass to pick up electromagnetic fields.
$4 or $5 right there. You just get it out of the sporting goods area. Done.
And people wonder, well, how do you use that? Well, how does a compass work?
The basic principle of it is, it's based on electromagnetic fields.
Yeah, it picks up north.
Yeah, the north is, the strongest point because it's magnetized. And, more often than not, you could be in an area with a compass and it'll go kind of haywire if there's a lot of high EMF because it's interfering with the north magnetism.
And if you get a compass and you get near like a electrical box or anything that's putting off high EMF, that needle will still turn, even though you're not facing north, it'll still point towards that EMF.
Yeah, because it's the hottest spot that it's close.
So if you're using it on a ghost investigation and you're in a building and you already know, okay, north is this direction, and you're in another room and it starts pointing off to a different direction, then you're picking up EMF.
Yeah. Plus, if you could be a big hand if you're lost in some location or something like that. You want to get the heck out of there, just keep heading north. But things like that. Basic K2 meter these days is about $60.
Yeah, a lot of your gauze meters. I call it the great brick, but the standard gauze meter it runs about $50-$60.
Well, even like the standard regular old school, the EMF detector that runs. I think $70 to $80. That's just that's with the numerals on the screen. Then you go into the advanced, like the lowest model of the Mel meter, which is a multimeter because it measures temperature and EMF at the same time. It's what it was designed for. A lot of these things weren't designed for ghost hunting.
No.
But things like the Mel meter, it had that in mind. So you can do environmental measurements with this. And that runs $98.
You can get on eBay. They sell a cheap EMF meter, and I think it's like $12, and it's white, and it's got 3 lights. It's got a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. The ELF meter.
Yeah.
It's very cheap. It runs about $10 to $12.
Yeah, and it's basically that was actually made for as a cheap Geiger meter.
Yeah.
And that's all that's used for, essentially. And then, boom, right off the bat, you save. If you want to, start a budget. Essentially, when you get into this, and times are tough. Not everybody has, the funds for this sort of thing. A lot of people, they have kids, they have mortgages. They're just, trying to make a life for themselves. But they want to get into this. It's little things like that. You start off with, if you can spare a little time and money, just save up. Always keep an eye out for things too. That's how a lot of my stuff I got.
Well, I know a lot of people, they think they need to have the IR camera, but one thing to keep in mind, if you're at a location and people are seeing stuff, an example is they see something in their kitchen and they see shadow movement, you don't have to have an IR to pick that up. You can have a standard camcorder
Oh yeah.
with a flashlight tucked up next to it as
Yeah.
a lighting source, and you can still pick up shadow with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they're claiming they're seeing it with their naked eye, well, guess what? A standard camcorder is going to pick that up as long as you illuminate that area.
Exactly. Because like I was, I saw all these TV shows and I saw them using all this real high-end equipment, and it's like the first thing I got was of course a digital recorder for about $40, and then I also got like a wireless little IR security camera that came with a little monitor. That all ran me. It was about $100 altogether, just those two things, and that's all I used. And of course, pen and paper. I just had handy. And yeah, that was like my first investigation. Was at a friend's house who was moving. This was a big, creepy house, but he had some activity there, and this is my first time going into it. So me and a bunch of friends just got together and just said, because he had all the wife and kids out, they were already moved out, and they had most of their stuff gone, so we had the whole house to ourselves. And this place was like, it was a 2-story house, but it was an old house, creepy looking house. I'll show you it sometime. The most activity we really kind of had was up in the attic. Because at one point, I had my friend, because we hooked the wireless monitor up to a DVD recorder, and we had it playing real time on TV downstairs. And we took the wireless camera up to the attic area, because I saw a shadow movement there, just head towards that way. Because I turned the corner, and I was just turned the corner, went upstairs, in the corner of my eye in this doorway, I saw a shadow. It was just there, and then it just moved away, like toward this, where the attic was, the entrance was. So I ran in there, and I ran up the attic. That was the first place I wanted to go. But yeah, I ran up there like a bat out of hell. Everybody was like laughing at me. They was like, dude, if I see something, dark and mysterious like that, run away. I'm not going to chase after him. Like I am. I want to see this sort of thing. And I ran up there and realized, I didn't have a flashlight on me. I'm standing literally like on a bookshelf in the attic, so half of me is in the attic, and I'm just standing there, doing like EVP session, just trying to listen, and I realize I'm right in the middle of this attic, so whatever ran up here could be right behind me. And that just starts playing in the back of my mind.
And that's another thing. People need a flashlight.
Yeah, yes, definitely always have a flashlight.
Going in these dark locations.
Yeah, because safety reasons, first and foremost, because, you never know what's, beneath your feet if you're not looking down and it's pitch dark.
Yeah.
And another thing with, like, having a camcorder, I try not to look through the viewfinder a lot. It blinds you a little bit.
Yeah, it blinds you and you
cuts off your natural night vision.
Yeah, and it also, your perception of the environment's off.
Way off.
Way off. I can tell you how many times I tripped and fell because I'm watching through the eyepiece instead of just watching straight ahead, because you naturally want to look at the eyepiece instead of just walking, and you can just run into something.
Exactly.
Now, one thing Viper Paranormal had on YouTube that I liked was for IR light. They had the old automotive,
like a shop light.
A shop light, and they had a black light or an IR light.
Yeah, on one investigation, it was a friend of a friend. She had some activity there, and she had like some black light rope around her living room walls. And I had one of my Sony infrared cameras that I had just gotten. It was weird because, it was kind of like, the standard neon effect, but it was also pretty dark in there. But on the camcorder, the sucker was bright as day.
Yeah.
So that's when I started getting into the thought of, doing research on like full spectrum and stuff like that. And that was essentially part of my first kit. Because, a friend of mine, he asked me one day, are you really serious about this stuff? I'm like, yeah. And he wanted to start up a group with me, and he's like, all right, well, I'll help you go in on, some equipment. And I was like, I know the place to go. And I went to the site, and they had the kit that I really, really wanted. And it came with, a full spectrum camera, a light, bracket, millimeter, recorder, and it was all inside of a fancy case. It's a pluck foam case, and that ran us about $435 altogether. And that was like my first big kit. The only thing was the camera had a malfunction. Every time you put a card in, it wouldn't read the card, or it would half-ass read it sometimes. And so we had to send that back and got a new one, and it's worked perfect ever since. Things like that. You don't have to dump money into it, because I'm lucky to be single. and I don't really have like a lot of other bills other than, my rent and, other little obligations. I have, enough money set aside where I could actually go out and do those things. Not a lot of people can do that.
No, they may have a family and kids.
Exactly.
I find it hard sometimes to get equipment. I've donated plasma before.
Yeah.
Just trying to save money up, and of course I'm a car hobbyist, so I'm trying to rebuild a car. So trying to keep your money separate, and priorities take first.
It gets hard, and there's always those times where every once in a while you will have a little bit of spare money aside. Just don't go to McDonald's. Eat at home.
Yeah.
That'll save you some money right then and there. Little things like that, and always one big thing that I always like to do is hit the pawn shops up.
Oh yeah.
They are, a treasure trove of equipment. And it's not like, your high-end equipment that you want, but it's good enough to where, it was like when I first got an actual Sony camera with night shot on it. That's what I always wanted. Got one. It was at a pawn shop. It was pretty cheap. And that was my main camera for a long time until recently when I hit the mother load. Always, and that's another thing, always look out for deals. Some sure things fall into your lap, and say you do, like I had, spare money at the time, and I was saving up for something else. I think I was saving up for like a metal rim, and then all of a sudden, something fell in my lap. I was like, oh my god. And we got like this top of the line camcorder now that works perfect. But another thing you want to look into is lighting. If you're going to get an infrared camera, do not get a Bell and Howell. That's another no. Do not get them. I'm sorry, Bell and Howell, but your night vision camcorder is no bueno. I did. That was one of the first cameras I did research on, and I was not impressed seeing what everybody was saying about it. As a regular camcorder, it's pretty decent, but as a night vision camcorder, no, don't get them. But yeah, you're gonna want the proper lighting. And when I wanted to go for the Ghost Adventure styles. They're infrared lights. Those are Sony brands as well, but they go from anywhere between $100 to $200. Sometimes it's $400.
Yeah, and people, if they have talent, if they can, they can make stuff on their own.
Oh yeah.
You can get online and make your own LED lights. I've seen a lot of teams do that.
Oh yeah.
Instead of going out and buying the phantom lights and stuff like that, they got a little, engineering behind them, or they're an electrician or something, and they're able to
solder on there yourself.
Solder, because it's a light. And I usually tell people, if you have like a gauze meter or something, don't put a switch on it because you're modifying the equipment. I'm not big into modifying the equipment, but if you make a basic light, that's not modifying the equipment. You're making a light.
Yeah.
As long as it's not used as detecting something. Leave it like that,
Right.
But I've seen a lot of groups make their own IR lights, EM pumps and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, also another good cheap floodlight is like you're saying with the shop lights. It'd be better to use in the winter. Of course, I wouldn't do it in the middle of summer, but the heat lamp bulbs are infrared, and they throw out a really good floodlight. It'll flood the entire freaking huge room. But also, I recommend doing it in the winter because those things get hot fast. And
safety reasons too. You don't want to put nothing near there that could catch fire.
Yeah, and it will catch fire very easily. But little alternatives like that. I started out getting the Creepy Hollow that's exclusive to GhostStop.com. They're some of the cheapest lights out there, but they're little spotlights, and they work wonders. I can't say enough about those. They're $53.
One thing I want to kind of dive into is DVR systems. A lot of teams, the majority of your teams out there, they use a basic security system, night vision camera. You got your base and all the cameras plug into it. The majority of the teams that I know, especially out here in Oklahoma, that's what we all use.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you may be on a time limit. The client only wants you in there at a certain time, and setting up the equipment. I've been in equipment tech, and setting up that DVR just takes forever.
It's a pain.
It's a pain, and plus, a lot of times the images are pixelated, scratchy looking. They're real hard to see. And then Another problem with the DVR system is your cords wear out.
Oh yeah.
On our investigation, we kind of learned the hard way. You got to picture it, folks. When with a security system type DVR system, those are made to be stationary. You run the wires, you mount the cameras, and leave it. The way you use it for ghost hunting, you deploy it, film it, tear it back down, and wrap it up again, and you put a lot of wear and tear on the cords, and the cords are not that big. They're very thin.
No.
And they wear out, and we went through that situation of, we got a couple broken cords.
Yeah.
The wires wear out. You're not getting any images. But one thing we are learning, portable cams. Put them on a tripod. We're kind of steering away from the DVR because it seems like with the portable cams, you get better shots. Images are clearer, and if you need to move it, you can move it. Now, with a DVR system, when you mount the cameras, I've seen it on investigations. You tape it down somewhere and you go to pull the tape, you may damage their property.
Yeah.
You try to put it on a tripod and it may fall off the tripod. But with the portable cams, they're made to put on a tripod, set it and forget it. And like I said, if you got to move it, you can move it. You can deploy the digital portable cameras a whole lot quicker than that DVR system.
And, back on the budgeting thing, a lot of my cameras, I got from pawn shops and, just happening upon them. And for good prices, other than, spending $400 or $500 on a camera, that's, bare minimum. It's like these days, especially because everybody wants the night vision stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to go for night vision. Well, unfortunately, some goofball figured out a way to see through clothing with the night shot.
Yeah.
And so they decided to make them more expensive instead of just having them, for, Joe Schmo customer.
Yeah.
So now you have to get professional level cameras. So that's why I say hit up pawn shops. You'll get really great deals on infrared cameras. Just look for that, Sony. Do your little research if you want to, because Sony is particularly the only one these days that makes that particular night shot function.
Yeah, see like garage sales.
Right, exactly.
You might find some at garage sales, but I think pawn shops would probably be the best.
Oh yeah.
We've made killings off of pawn shops.
Yeah.
So very good deals.
Very, very good deals. But yeah, just work within a budget if you need to, because if you go too far off your budget, of course you're gonna get into a hole you don't want to. So that's why you always set yourself, one little thing at a time. Sometimes the smallest things are the best, because when you in the end, this is what I kind of figured out after getting all the equipment that I got. You get kind of remorseful. Because you got so much stuff to tote around.
Yeah.
And you get to that point where you're just like, oh man, I don't want to carry any of this stuff. And just keep it simple, keep it basic.
Yeah.
Because if you're part of a team, that's another thing. You're part of a team, you can consolidate money for things just for the team. Buy that, that super duper, detector or whatever like that. And, it becomes the groups essentially. So it really does help if you really know your group.
Yeah.
Especially in situations like that, you don't want to get ripped off in the end. Somebody, that houses all the equipment, one day they might up and move, and next thing you know, you have no more equipment because they decided to move away with your equipment.
Yeah, I had that happen when, in my past paranormal group, the leader of the group owned all the equipment. Had the DVR system, had the EMF meters, Like for me at the time, I only had a digital camera and a recorder, but he had all the high-end stuff. And when he moved to Tulsa, that was it. Yeah. Like the group we're in now, yes, the group itself has equipment, but you have your own equipment. I bring my gear in too. Yeah. So it looks like we have a whole lot more than we actually do. Yeah, the basics are always important when you get into equipment, because a lot of people can't afford it. But let's kind of jump more into the expensive stuff now. There's different items you can get for ghost hunting, like the spirit boxes.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the spirit boxes and what kind are out there.
The spirit box started out as the Frank's box. Initially, what it was meant to go through. It was just basically it would scan through radio stations, in a pretty fast pace, because over the years, it started out, Frank's box, and then it went to, which was, Frank's box was kind of made to scan through radio stations, and people, really couldn't afford it because it was, all handmade and done one at a time. So people started, looking for other alternatives, such as what they became known as the Shack Hack, which is just a cheap, portable Radio Shack radio that had a button on it where you can, scan through those frequencies. And what you would do is you'd open it up, bend a pin, close it back up, and then every time you would hit that reverse or forward mode, it would basically, without holding down the button or pushing the button manually, it would scan through automatically. And it would create like a white noise, and it would oscillate through the frequencies at a rapid pace. And it would create almost a static where they believe spirits could speak through that.
Now, you can still buy that stuff today.
Oh, yeah. It's just, I tried it with a particular model of the Radio Shack radio, and I saw one day and I picked it up, and it was pretty cheap. It was like $50-$60. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take this home, look at some tutorials online, and be off to the races. Little did I know, when I opened it up, they, I guess, got tired of people buying them up just to hack them, and so they changed the board on it. And in order to do that particular model, you had to physically have a switch that you had to make yourself wired to the board. And I was like, I don't know how to solder, so I'm not going to even mess with it. I mean, I still got it in my room right now. It's just sitting there collecting dust. I'm thinking about painting it red, making a little Silent Hill gag radio. Yeah, so I wound up picking up the PSB7 Spirit Box, created by Gary Galka and DAS Designs. And it says on there, used for ITC communication. What's great about that is, it's reasonably priced. When I got it, it was still in the $100 range. But they've gone down like substantially. Their cheapest one's like $50 to $60 now, because they're coming out with the different models of it. What it was particularly designed for, it scans through the radio station, but you can also pick how fast it goes. With like on FM, the lowest or the fastest would be 100 milliseconds. So that's bam, 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 bam. And normally you would maybe pick up the occasional radio station because it scans through it so fast you'll hear a blip. But some people go out of their way to hack those by removing the antenna, or like recently I've been experimenting with a Faraday cage. And I just got some tin foil and made a pouch out of it and threw it all in there, and it works perfect. Because all that does, the Faraday cage just cuts out all that excess noise. So if something comes through, it might be genuine. So that's at least that's why we're testing it. But things like that, basically just ITC, and it's just creating the static so you're able to communicate one-on-one with spirits, as the theory goes.
What do you think about the ovuluses? They have several different models of ovuluses out there.
Mm-hmm.
We currently on the team have an Ovulus 3, but it seemed like the older ovuluses, they weren't the same. A lot of the, Ovulus X, Ovulus M's, a lot of them didn't have display screens. So it would spit out words, but you couldn't understand what it was saying.
Right. I know the X particularly has a separate screen that you got to buy.
Yeah,
and that's
plug it in.
More money.
And then
the batteries don't last on it, from what I heard.
Yeah, the batteries don't last long, and you could manipulate the device. You could add words, take away words.
That's what I didn't like about the Ovulus at first. It was he's like gearing up for an investigation, and you do research on the place. Well, I'm going to put in, if I'm going to some, Aztec temple, I'm going to put in all these type of, Aztec, Hispanic type words. Well, you're manipulating the device right then and there.
Oh, exactly.
Because it'll cycle through whenever there's no energy readings. So you may or may not, get that word that kind of pertains to the situation or the environment, but it's pure coincidence at that point.
And that's what I like about the Ovulus 3. You can't manipulate the device.
And it has so many modes on it too. That's what's kind of changed my mind on the device, particularly, for instance, we're at one of our, investigators' house. We did an investigation there, and we were doing a reveal to her. We broke out the Spirit Box and the Ovulus. Interestingly enough, we got the same word out of both devices almost instantly. I mean, that right there is, how do you do that? How can that be purely coincidence?
Yeah, exactly. Because the Ovulus said ledge, and then at the same time, the Spirit Box said ledge on it also.
Yeah. What are the odds?
And what's needed with those devices, we went on in one investigation, and the Ovulus said cry. And then all of a sudden we heard this disembodied cry.
Uh-huh.
Another location, it said bang. And the moment the investigator says, hey, this thing just said bang, strong energy, and all of a sudden there was a crashing noise in the background. So those checks and balances.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. But yeah, it's like the Ovilus 3, definitely for that price range, I don't know. I know you spent a lot of money on that one.
It was about $300.
Yeah. And I know I've heard like a lot of other investigators, get nothing with it. It just depends on how you use the device, it's experimental. And, for some, you'll get a lot of hits and some not so much. But it's like, these devices, in my opinion, are like the modern day Ouija board.
Yes.
And it's also kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like the theory of with the dowsing rods too. Somebody, whose energy is put into that particular, like the dowsing rods, that's why you don't, hand it over to somebody else, or else you're going to ruin it. That's, the way the theory goes. It's kind of like bad karma. It just ruins the effect of it.
And there's several different ways and several different devices people use. Jacob's ladder.
Jacob's ladders.
People make a Jacob's ladder. It puts out energy out, a high EMF. Now, it is a device you have to use a lot of safety around.
Oh, yeah.
Because it puts out a lot of electricity, and you don't want anybody hurt by using that. The voltage coming off of it, the ghost can manipulate it where it can pull the energy one direction, pull the energy another direction. I've seen that happen. Making it spark a certain amount of time, like 2 sparks for yes, 1 for no. I've seen that happen.
It's like a high-powered EMF detector, essentially.
Yeah, very dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, it looks cool in the dark, especially. But, I mean, well, it's like our group, we use things like the globes.
Yeah, the plasma balls.
Plasma balls are cool. I never thought of that until, I saw this group, and I was like, that's an interesting idea, because you put that sucker in demo mode, and demo mode, it looks off, but when you go to touch it, it kicks on.
Yeah, and there's another idea of somebody's, like, needing EMF pumps, they figure the energy's low, maybe that'll help something materialize or get any activity. If you can't afford one of those and you got a plasma ball at home, you can use that as a EMF pump, because we tested it. You turn that plasma ball on, it's nothing but pure energy.
Right.
It puts out a lot into the environment if you turn that plasma ball on and leave it on. And you can do tests with it while it's on. You can ask the spirit if they can touch it. And if you see anything arc, I mean, it's like a contained Jacob's ladders, basically.
Essentially, yeah.
But we like to use it in demo mode or audio mode. And, it's off, but somebody has to touch the top of it to get it to light up.
Right.
And we've been on investigations where the sucker will light up on its own, just by asking the spirit or the ghost to touch it.
Another thing is like, one thing that you brought in that was borrowed from the bobber light.
The bobber light, yeah, the ghost.
That's a pretty neat little idea, because, essentially what it is just like a bobber, a light up bobber with the cap screwed to the point where you just have to touch it to turn it on.
Yeah, they use it for night fishing. It's a pretty large device, probably about as big as your hand, maybe a little bit longer. But it's used for, you turn it on and you throw it over your boat to light up underneath your boat. It's used similar to the flashlight trick.
Yeah, that's been debunked, but this is more of instead of like the heat, this is something that feels a little more natural, but it's, experimental.
Yeah, it hangs off a string.
Yeah.
You got the bottom loosened up, similar to the flashlight trick. Instead of sitting on its side, it's hanging off a string, so anything that turns that light on has to push up from the bottom. And so to see that device light up and dim out, and you can ask yes and no questions with it. You can make it brighten it up, dim it down by asking it to. We've seen that happen. And just like any other equipment, like we were talking about the Ovilus, people are like, well, I bought this $300 Ovilus and it's just a freaking speaking spell. And, I wasted my money. When you go on investigations, you got your bag full of equipment, and it's like fishing.
Yep.
You don't know what lure the fish is going to bite on. And the same way with ghosts, because you may have your K2 meter out, your gauze meter, your millimeter, your ghost light, your plasma ball. You got all these different trigger items. You don't know what the spirit is able to manipulate at that time.
Yeah, it's essentially a crapshoot.
Because we've seen it where the K2 meter went off, but the ghost meter's not doing nothing.
Yeah.
Or the gauze meter's not going off, but the K2 is. You know, the Mel meter's going off, and none of the rest of them, and which is paranormal because they all should be clicking off.
Oh, like an interesting point, you know, an investigation we did recently, you know, we had the Mel meter and the ghost meter going off.
Yeah.
That was interesting because the equipment that it was on wasn't plugged in, B, was gutted of any type of motors or any electronics or anything. So we couldn't explain that one because it went off for a good solid 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, gone.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I think it was episode 2 I was talking about. I thought it would just went off for seconds, but I guess it was longer. After,
it felt like it was a long time.
Yeah, just an update on that investigation. It was actually minutes, so that was pretty wild.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's little things like that, you know, that manipulates, you know, these tools that we use because we're not using it. We're more or less using like the EMF meter. We're not always looking to communicate through those. We're just looking through environmental shifts, changes, looking for that power box in the corner of the room that could be putting off that fear cage.
Yeah, and people, they think, well, all that equipment's used to talk to ghosts, which it's not.
No.
It's just to check the environment.
That's just it. You know, things like that and data loggers and stuff like that some teams tend to use. It's, you know, just, you know, things like that. You know, it's like we approach things from more of a scientific standpoint. There's nothing wrong with being spiritual or religious.
Oh, no.
Absolutely not. I mean, go ahead, be that way if you need to. If that helps you, good.
Well, the way I look at it too is when it comes down to religion and spiritualism, all that came about because of the paranormal. The way I look at it, because weird stuff happens, they don't know why it's happening, so they're trying to explain it the best they can. And back then, they didn't understand what was going on, so it had to be supernatural. But today we're getting more scientific with it, or we're able to explain it a little bit better, or at least try to.
Yeah, and you know, little things like that. Yeah, and also the skeptics that come along. You know, it's kind of hard to prove or disprove either way, but at least you know you have that piece of data that can't be easily explained, which you know makes it paranormal. And a lot of the times, you know, you will have skeptics come along and get to the point. You know, I've heard some skeptics where they try to talk it out and then you explain to them, well, that happened because of this. And then they get pigeonholed and all of a sudden, you know, they're saying you're a fraud because they have no other way of explaining it.
You know, and to find the paranormal, you got to disprove the normal.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that always ticks me off with a lot of groups nowadays. They don't debunk anymore.
No.
They hear a tap, they hear a sound, and immediately think, "Oh my God,
yeah,
it was
the building
a ghost."
is settling, and you know the roof's creaking, and it's the middle of the night. You know, all the people have gone home, and that's what's going to happen. You know, in the house or building in the middle of the night. It's just the way it is.
And people need to learn their equipment.
Right.
You know, we were with one group, and they kept saying they had all these K2 responses, and all it was the battery was dying on their K2 unit.
Yeah.
Because it was trying to indicate to them that, hey, the battery's about to go dead. My gauze meter does that. When it starts to die, it starts chirping. It's supposed to let you know that it's dying. People need to learn their equipment.
Yeah, more or less. Because they see it on TV, and then they buy it, and then they're all like, I know what I'm doing with this thing because I saw it on TV. I saw them use it this way. And I was the same way in the beginning. I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I started reading more into things about EMF and EVP and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, I like studying both sides of the spiritual and the scientific. Well, it seems like we're trying to wrap up here for a little bit. Thank you, Adam, for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having
me. If they want to watch your podcast, this could get weird. Where would they need to go to watch?
Just go to YouTube and just look up Weird Podcast. You can email me at weirdpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, I got a Facebook now. Just This Could Get Weird. Just look us up on there. And got a Twitter, Weird Podcast, @Weird Podcast on Twitter.
And I'll also be on Adam's podcast. I'll be his guest on his podcast. If you like the episode and you like the other episodes on Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma, just hit that subscribe button there on YouTube. Like me on Facebook, and I'll talk to you guys later.